In this video, we're going to learn about a HR employee who's exposing HR, right? HR can be just as petty with their own internal politics and office politics as they can be with you. So let's learn from her experience, right? Firstly, I want to focus on these 3 points. She mentioned the reason why she decided to quit her corporate HR job was due to hypocrisy, micromanagement, and lack of transparency. So what was actually going on here, right? So we're going to hear from her in a moment, but I want to remind you of these 3 key points, right? So we've got hypocrisy, micromanagement, and lack of transparency. So these are things that you would come across again and again in the corporate environment when you are dealing with HR, right? There'll be hypocrisy in the sense that there'll be favoritism in terms of women. For example, when it comes to DEI, feminism, management, liberal political views, things like that. So that's a key explanation of what type of hypocrisy you'll have to deal with double standard in employee standards, micromanagement or employee management being treated quite well, some employees not being treated very well. You could have all these type of instances. Then you could have micromanagement. And the micromanagement is, like I said, they're trying to control all your opinions, control how you spend your time, control, how you're being managed and things like that. So they can really intervene in a micromanaging way. So hypocrisy, micromanagement, and a lack of transparency. So of course there'll be lack of transparency when it comes to layoffs and things like that. You won't find out about a layoff until the last month when they have to let you know, even though they've been planning it out for 6 months in advance. And they'll only, like I say, let you know in the last minute scenario. Same thing when it comes to an employee violation. They could be investigating you for 3 months, 6 months. You don't know until the very last minute. So let's listen to a bit more about her story and how bad it got for her working in corporate HR.
Everywhere. Since the start of the pandemic, introduction of different employee reportings about what they accomplished during the day and installing different tracking softwares to their computers brought to the last drop, after which I said, that's it. I don't want to contribute to such a place anymore. I felt so bad that so many employees on different levels, starting from interns to senior vice presidents, they were reporting on their time and tasks that they completed, not because they loved the job, but because they were forced to do in order to keep their position in the company. Just a week before, I had an issue with one of our senior HR colleagues I was closely working with.
So we're going to go back to that story in a moment, right? But what's quite interesting here is that tracking software. So during the lockdowns, you could see how little companies value you, how they see you as just really like a rat in a rat race, like a hamster on a hamster wheel. They want to track everything you do, how much time you're spending doing different tasks, and then measuring all the productivity of all the little tasks. And people feeling pressure to work at a certain pace is a complete lack of dignity, self-respect, and trust from the company when it comes to how they treat employees. And even HR, even though HR is typically full of HR Karens and things like that, it looks like some of them do have a conscience and they do sense how ridiculous some of these rules are. So let's listen to a second view on this.
I received a digital thank you certificate with my name on it. This is a piece of paper that thanked me for being there when the company needed me to be. I didn't keep that certificate, of course, because I don't need it. When I received that electronic thank you certificate, I didn't think about anything except the fact that the certificate looks very distasteful. Basically, it takes less than 5 minutes to copy paste your name and that's it. But just after a week of being recognized for my outstanding HR services as an HR team member and having good KPIs.
So another thing to add here, right, is about being treated like a child. So not only does HR tend to treat, employees like children in a bad way and treat them like domesticated house pets, it likes to treat them within their own team, right? Getting a thank you certificate. You see this quite common in corporate roles, like a really cheap plastic or glass award for working at the company for 5 to 10 years, some completely pointless thing like that. Like a thank you certificate. It's like you're being treated like a child, getting a sticker, getting special credit. It's quite distasteful, as you mentioned, and it's like, it's good to be recognized for doing a good job, but you'd prefer to getting paid for that rather than just a certificate.
Surprisingly, I wasn't instructed how to handle such requests, and I made a mistake by actually trying to help that very employee. So not intentionally, I disinformed one of our colleagues about office policy, and in 5 minutes after that, After sending my feedback to that employee, I was cyber attacked by my colleagues, including my manager, for not responding correctly. So I was very apologetic, of course, and I said I will send another message to that employee with my apologies and that this question would be readdressed to another department to handle, and please disregard what I sent you before. But basically the question was very administrative. Well, actually, I'm going to tell you what was it about. It was an employee who wanted to come to office to have his chair. The chair, guys.
So, reading in between the lines here, what essentially happened is an employee emailed her as a HR contact and said, okay, I knew we have lockdowns, I'm working from home, I have a specific chair in the office. Can I please have that? Can I pick it up from the office? Can I have it delivered to my apartment where I'm working permanently for several years during the lockdowns? The key thing is, apparently, she wasn't allowed to give them advice on that. She had to go to maybe a specific security department to approve that chair being moved. See, HR seems to have these petty rules, not just for other staff, but also within themselves, right? So just giving accidental information to one colleague rather than directing it to another team. She has to apologize profusely. She's getting scolded by people. She's being treated basically like she's really done something that's massively wrong just for this one incident of giving an employee advice to how to get a chair. Now, key thing here really is that corporations, they lack common sense now. And I really think about these corporations. What were these companies like? I've worked, if you're new to the channel, I've worked at companies like Goldman's, Morgan Stanley, and so on for over a decade in the finance industry. Sometimes I wonder, what was Goldman Sachs like 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or any of these companies? And I think a lot of them were they weren't perfect, but they were somewhat more entrepreneurial. They were more efficient. They were more focused on making money rather than pushing agendas. Not saying these companies specifically, but just in general, corporations pushing woke agendas and things like that. It was just men trying to really be successful. It might have been more cutthroat and ruthless, but it was kind of like just get the work done and do it to the best of the ability that you can. It might be in a hyper competitive in that type of environment. But now it's like there's so many rules that common sense is completely disregarded. And I'll give you an example. I one time received a policy violation. I was written up by the company, reported to very senior management, because I sent an email from my personal Gmail account to my manager that I left something in the fridge at work. I left a yogurt in the fridge at work, and I was just emailing her to let her know that on my day off I was going to be picking it up. The reason why I emailed her is because I just came back from some sick leave, and they had some strict rules for me not to be in the office overworking myself and working too many hours, because I'd done that in the past. So I basically send it to my manager. I go and pick up the yogurt, of course, from the work fridge, and then I have my day off and I do whatever I want to do on my day off, right? But then a couple months later, the manager realizes, oh no, we have a new policy that you can't email co-workers anything from your personal email address. Anything, not even picking up a yogurt from the office, because that's now a new communications policy. So this gets reported to my manager's manager. They end up doing an investigation, ask me for all my other emails that I sent to my co-workers, which I hadn't. They said that maybe they're going to have to get a lawyer in to check my personal Gmail account and see what emails have been sent. Completely crazy things. Like you're not going to get access to my personal email. You can go and check your company communication surveillance on what's been sent by my personal email to the company. You can do that internally at the company. You're not going to go through all my Gmail emails. So they ripped me up for a policy violation that I did this one email. And what was interesting is when they wrote me up and had it drafted in an email of this policy violation, they didn't mention what exactly happened. And I responded directly. I said, you're basically holding me responsible as violating company policy for emailing my manager once for picking up a yogurt from the office. This is how ridiculous corporations have become. Not just HR, but the entire corporate culture. And they shouldn't be surprised that our employees are just quitting or just looking for another opportunity just to have more freedom and peace of mind, because it's become ridiculous. It's not about the work. It's about everything apart from the work.
Received several messages from different HR colleagues, including my manager, who were scolding me for my reckless answers. So I don't know if it was fair or not. Maybe it's the culture in that organization to treat an employee like that, or it's just a pandemic nature of work that made people really mean to each other. I would gladly research studies about corporate psychopaths and how to recognize them if one day.
So she mentions looking into corporate psychopaths, and that's really what it is. It's become a tyranny. It's become like an authoritarian dictatorship in a lot of these offices. That's why anything you can do to get flexibility flexibility, hybrid work, working from home, remote work, becoming a contractor, things like that. This will really help you get your peace of mind, because all this petty, pointless, creating rules just to blame you, these corporate psychopaths, these things do exist, right? Lots of just bossing people around for the sake of it.
Another interesting moment I want to share is that right before the pandemic started, I had a conversation with my managers who wanted to shift my working hours to the night hours instead of day hours, because it's a global company and they wanted an HR to work during the nights. But basically I said no, and I cannot work like that. First of all, I cannot do it. My biological hours tell me that I need to sleep at 3 a.m. And secondly, HR department is not an emergency room. There is nothing critical going on, really. Ours are not doctors who need to save someone's lives. It's freaking admin work, sorry. But at that moment, I thought that, what if I make a mistake because I'm distracted, or because I didn't have enough sleep, or something else? I mean, I have no focus. Would they crucify me?
So that's a quick point there, right? In terms of, dealing with a change of work hours. There's so many tasks in the workplace, and hopefully you figured this out by now from my videos. Though you're told this work task is super urgent, we have to do it today, you have to stay late and get it done, when really you could do it tomorrow. HR, same with investment banking. Oh, you got to produce this presentation for the client, they need it tomorrow. And then you've got to stay until 1 a.m. and do it in the office. It's like, no, well, I could do that working from home, firstly. Secondly, it's not really needed for the client tomorrow. Thirdly, it's really due by the end of the week. And I could essentially, send it to the manager at the end of the week. He's going to review it for a couple of days, then send it on to the client. So it's like, you're always put in these positions where it's something super urgent when it's not. And most work is like administrative work. It's not like being a doctor working in a life-threatening situation. So many times you'll be expected to kind of do work at a pace that is just unrealistic. And that's why if you ever question that from me and you think, well, maybe that's not true, anytime your manager gives you a tight deadline, get the work done on time, then ask them a few days later if they had a look at it. And most time they haven't, or like sometimes weeks or months will go by and it just becomes ridiculous that you've been put under pressure to do something that isn't really that urgent at all.
Failing at both. And each day starting at 9 a.m., I was internally struggling to turn on my laptop. I was living in fear about what I could possibly do wrong again. I didn't notice vividly in the beginning that the whole department and the company in general was full of toxic people. So eternal fake competition with each other and fake praise, fake help, just to backstab you and tell the manager that they helped me and take the credit. It was the last straw.
So she mentions this type of fear culture, right? And that's something you should always understand about corporate environments and what is being manufactured by HR, which of course impacts HR, like she's saying. So lots of fake competition, passive aggressive co-workers, staying late in the office, coming in early in the office, talking down to other people, trying to get other people to do work for them because they're pretending they're more superior so they can position themselves for a management role, giving fake praise and being fake nice to people, right? I'll give you an example of working on an investment banking sales and trading floor. When a manager who I was working with, I just recently started the role. I was kind of new to some new systems and things. And he would basically be very unhelpful and just straight up ignore my questions, even though we're sitting next to each other, and I'll ask him a question and he'd act like he didn't hear what I said. But when his management will come by, like the management of the team, then he'd answer my question. So it'll only be helpful when the senior management was present, otherwise he'd ignore me. And this is typically his habit, to basically lie to my face, right? Lie to your face. And then when the management were there, senior managers, he'd be helpful. So being lied to, being ignored, being with toxic co-workers, only getting help when it benefits them, their perception from senior management, is typical for senior management to do, and many toxic people. And many of these people, I realized, they can hide behind their job title, they can hide behind a desk in the office, but in the real world, they couldn't get away with conducting themselves like this. And you should always be aware with how toxic people are in the workplace environment and how they wouldn't be able to handle it outside of it. And without being too specific, in one of those instances, I did ask the person if they want to handle it outside the office, and they completely backed away and cowered down. This is the type of people you're dealing with, like the worst type of slimy, greasy people who get put in these some of these senior roles to basically take advantage of good people who are working hard like you. Now, if you're getting sick of HR, if you're getting sick of the corporate culture, reach out to me. I can give you some genuine career advice in navigating these difficult environments, helping you deal with HR Karens, toxic co-workers, psychopathic corporate culture. Link in description if you want to speak with me directly. Let me know in comments some of the dealings you've had with HR. As you can see on the screen, happiness reducers, how you dealt with HR yourself, how you managed to maintain a good clear state of mind when you're dealing with these type of weird work environments. There are 2 recommended videos on your screen right now, a free ebook in the description, and I'll see you next time.